Money FM 89.3, the best of Saturday mornings. Saturday morning sit down.
Joining us in the studio, Her Excellency Gabrielle Rush, the New Zealand High Commissioner to Singapore. We are going to be looking at a lot of things, but among them, the intersection of International Women's Day and the role of diplomacy. So, High Commissioner Rush, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here today. It's wonderful to be able to join you and your audience.
Yeah, and you've been here 2 years in Singapore already. Tell us a little bit about the relationship between New Zealand, the New Zealand government, and the Singapore government. Where are the ties? Where are the linkages?
Well, it's a relationship that goes right back to the beginning of Singapore. In fact, New Zealand recognised Singapore as a separate sovereign state the day after your National Day, so on the 10th of August 1965. So this year we're celebrating 60 years of what is a really, really sort of long-standing relationship of trust. And that's across the board. It's across defence and security issues and trade relations, more recently climate and sustainability, supply chain work we're doing at the moment, to niche areas that are a current focus around things like food security. So it couldn't be more wide-ranging and really significant for both countries.
I mean, just for the benefit of our listeners, give us an overview of some of those trade products. We'd guess the obvious ones, dairy, meat, things like that. Food security, of course, become particularly important, where we get our food from, how it's sourced. But what are some of the key products between the countries?
Well, I mean, obviously food, but not just the food you think about with our great dairy products. I mean, obviously that's sort of significant, but seafood as well. Zespri kiwi fruit. Everybody should know that when you pick up the very best kiwi fruit, if it has a Zespri label on it, that's New Zealand kiwi fruit.
We've had them on the show, on my Friday night show, the Zespri folks. Fantastic. They're doing really well in Singapore.
Absolutely wonderful. Our number one horticultural product that's exported. But a whole range of other horticultural products, seafood products.
Wine, of course.
Wine, of course.
Get some Cloudy Bay.
Absolutely. And in the other direction, from Singapore to New Zealand, there are important products, including fuel and a range of products that you wouldn't necessarily associate with the relationship. And, of course, Singapore plays a very key role as a hub. So there's a lot of products that come in here and flow on to other parts of the region. But I guess what I would say is that in addition to that trade, one of the things that is a hallmark of our relationship with Singapore is the work that we do together internationally on trade policy. And there we're really leaders in trade liberalisation and the importance of free and open markets. And that's a significant...
Such a hot topic these last couple of weeks, especially given what's going on in the U.S. And that is, I would imagine there's a lot of effort being put into that discussion.
Well, there is a lot of effort being put into the focus for those of us who rely on trade, like Singapore and New Zealand, small advanced economies, where for us there's no choice but to trade. We're working really closely together with like-minded partners, and we're in important trade agreements with Singapore. In fact, I think we have about 6 trade agreements that are in force between us, but significantly we have a bilateral free trade agreement, and we also are members of the CPTPP together, among others.
Yeah. Give us an overview of those trade agreements, what they would look like for our Singaporean listeners between New Zealand and Singapore.
Well, they cover a broad range of areas, including just the sort of the trade in goods, but also services that flow between our countries, and then a range of rules and regulations about the types of products that can flow, are the tariffs in force. I mean, ours tend to be very much focused on opening markets rather than closing markets, and they're wide-ranging.
And is education a part of that? Because I know when we spoke to your Australian counterpart, obviously there's a flow of education between both sides. Australian students going to Singapore, Singaporean students going to Australia. And I think there's an element of that with New Zealand too, I believe, with your wonderful universities there and organisations.
Absolutely. And I guess it's twofold. There's the part of it that's about international education, and there are members of the Singapore community in really senior positions who actually were educated back in New Zealand under the Colombo program back in the day. But that continues. So we have a good number of Singapore students who are being educated in New Zealand and vice versa. But the other side of it is the collaboration that goes on between New Zealand universities and Singapore counterparts and research institutions. And that can be in areas that are obvious strengths for New Zealand, like in agri-food and agri-science, but also in other fields, like around physics and quantum and things you wouldn't necessarily have thought of.
Yeah. We're in conversation with Gabrielle Rush, the New Zealand High Commissioner to Singapore. I was interested to read, actually just yesterday, the notice that Singapore's Defence Minister, Ng Hen, is visiting Auckland now, the 8th to the 11th of March, with the Singapore-New Zealand Defence Ministers meeting. And the acronym is the SNZDMM. That just flows off the tongue.
That's just a tongue roller, is it itself, isn't it? We do love an acronym here, we do.
Dr. Ng will be meeting with the New Zealand Defence Minister as well as the Prime Minister. Tell us about the defence linkage between the two countries.
Well, again, it goes right back to the very beginning. New Zealand actually had a battalion based in Singapore until 1989, and Singapore Armed Forces members have trained in New Zealand for many, many years. So those relationships go a long way back. Many of New Zealand's most senior defence personnel have spent some time residing in Singapore over the years. But the other part of it is that we're both members of the Five Powers Defence Arrangement, which is really important. Again, an arrangement between Malaysia, Singapore, the United Kingdom, Australia and New Zealand that's been in force for over 5 decades now and is of importance to both ourselves and Singaporean counterparts.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Let's bring it back to today, International Women's Day. We were told by, I think it was the Hungarian ambassador today, that there are 26, I'm quoting her, there are 26 female ambassadors in Singapore alone, which seems an extraordinarily high figure, but I take her word for it. Tell us your journey to becoming, the High Commissioner to Singapore in what has traditionally been a male-dominated world, that it would be international relations and diplomacy. How has it changed?
Well, my journey, if I start there, I guess I was raised in New Zealand as a child in the 70s and a teenager in the 80s, and all around me were conversations about women's issues, about nuclear non-proliferation and about race relations. And I was in an environment where conversations about changing the world were sort of front and centre, and I decided that I wanted to be part of those conversations and part of policy making. So first of all, I studied law. I was a Crown prosecutor in New Zealand for 4 years, but then had a chance to join the New Zealand Foreign Service, and I've been a member of the New Zealand Diplomatic Corps on and off for over 30 years now. And that has been a journey that has taken me to London, Beijing, Hong Kong, and now here, as well as a lot of time spent in New Zealand. And areas of focus that I've had include international law. I studied for my master's degree in London in international law, and so when I'm back in Wellington, often those are issues that I'm focused on. But also Asia has been front and centre for me.
I mean,
I was just going to add to that, Glenn. Did you have female role models in those fields growing up?
I didn't have any female role models in the law or in diplomacy. In fact, my female role models were close to home, and then in the form of my mother and my grandmother, and actually my father, which I can talk about, but also my swimming coach, who was significant when I was a competitive swimmer. She was one of New Zealand's first competitive sort of women swim coaches, and also my headmistress, who was absolutely formidable at Auckland Girls Grammar School. So I can talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, tell us about your family. How were they? You said your mum, your grandmother. How did they influence you?
Well, I grew up in a semi-rural environment in the hills west of Auckland on land that my grandfather had purchased in the early 1930s. So I was surrounded by cousins, and Grandma lived next door, and Esma was a force, and public service was central to who she was. She was a girl guide for the whole of her life and committed to everything that guiding represents. She was actually given a Queen's Services Medal for services to the Girl Guide movement when she turned 90.
Wow.
In the year 2000.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but we were expected to contribute to our communities and to be caring. And she taught me that manners matter. She had also survived through the Depression in a lot of poverty as people had at that time. And so she taught me that there's always a silver lining on every cloud as well. But my mother was young in the 70s and very much part of the women's movement, so that coloured that upbringing. And my dad had 4 sisters and 4 daughters. So when you're living in a semi-rural environment with an orchard and a large property, there's no choice but to chop the wood if you just have sisters. And that's what I did. I was driving a tractor at 11 and picking fruit and potting plants and playing that sort of key role. So I guess that's the family. At high school, my headmistress was a woman called Charmaine Pountney at Auckland Girls Grammar School, and she was a visionary leader in the 1980s who was both traditional. She would show up every morning in her academic gown and we would sing hymns and we were expected to strive for excellence. But she was also an unapologetic feminist, and she encouraged us to strive for positions of leadership that were not traditional. She would bring New Zealand's female MPs into the school to talk with senior students. And even now I work with a number of other women who were educated at Auckland Girls Grammar School during that time. And just yesterday, one of them, another New Zealand ambassador elsewhere, said to me about this interview, she said, just channel your inner Charmaine.
Lovely.
When we hear about your experience in Beijing, Hong Kong here, I mean, you're quite an old Asia hand. A lot of your time has really been focused in the diplomacy realm outside of New Zealand in this part of the world. Where do you think the opportunities lie for New Zealand when you look at China, Hong Kong, and Southeast Asia, kind of writ large? Where do you see the additional opportunities for either cultural or economic or political linkage?
It's a really good question, and it's central to my focus here in Singapore. New Zealand's had a long and important relationship with China, and I served in Beijing. We've had a free trade agreement in place between those two countries since 2008. But an area of focus currently is really strengthening New Zealand's relationship with Southeast Asia, and Singapore is a really critical part of that. And it's because this is our neighbourhood. With our Australian cousins, sure. Southeast Asia, this is definitely our neighbourhood. We recognise the enormous contribution that the ASEAN countries play globally, but also to us and to our prosperity and security. And so there's a lot of focus on enhancing everything from those supply chain links to looking at issues to do with climate and resilience together, to looking at opportunities for trade and investment. How can we work more closely together, both bilaterally with a country like Singapore, but also with ASEAN and with our Australian partners.
Building on from that, I'm always fascinated, as Glenn knows, with the influence of soft power in the year 2025. I think it's so important. You saw it with Coldplay and Taylor Swift and Keir Starmer handing the American president a handwritten letter by the king and the impact it had. You can't underplay the value of soft power. And I'm just seeing this week, I don't know if you'll comment on it one way or the other, but James Cameron is moving to New Zealand. Did you see this?
Ooh.
He's about to become a citizen of New Zealand. And I'm not going to go into the reasons why, but he's going to become a citizen of New Zealand. But they are political. They are political, as you can imagine. He's becoming a New Zealand citizen. He's bringing his entire company and the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that is going to bring to the New Zealand economy. All these Avatar movies and everything else will now be made in New Zealand. I mean, if you want to comment on that, please do. But what generally are your views on the value of soft power in international relations?
Well, just on James Cameron, the good news is that You can't actually instantly become a New Zealand citizen, and one of the reasons
he seems to think
be,
so. You might need to talk to him.
Well, the truth is that James Cameron has actually been involved in New Zealand for a long time, and he has made a number of his movies, and he is based in the Wellington region, and so he has strong linkages into that wonderful film ecosystem that was sort of, I guess, sort of flourished out of the Lord of the Rings movies and Weta Workshop.
Weta.
So Weta, so Sir Richard Taylor and Peter Jackson. But in terms of the importance of soft power, I guess the influence of culture and heritage and in how we do our work overseas. I mean, one area of real strength for New Zealand, I think, is in the role that our Indigenous heritage plays. In our, I guess, face to the world. And it is a relationship that we have with the Māori people of New Zealand, the Indigenous people of New Zealand, that goes back to our founding documents, the Treaty of Waitangi. And it's very much a heritage that we celebrate. And I certainly... I'm what we call a Pākehā New Zealander, so a European New Zealander, but my family have been in New Zealand for 6 generations. But in the New Zealand Foreign Ministry and in the New Zealand Public Service, I work alongside many people of Māori descent. And incorporating that and honouring the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi is very, very important in what we do. And in our diplomacy, we bring that in. It is a unique quality of New Zealand. It is something that we are proud of, but we also recognise that, as with all journeys in race relations and these sorts of things, it's not a linear one. Sometimes we move forwards, sometimes we move sideways, and sometimes people would say we move backwards a bit. But it is important to us and important to our face to the world.
We're talking with Gabrielle Rush, the New Zealand High Commissioner to Singapore. I have to ask you, just 2 weeks ago, the New Zealand tourism campaign, everyone must go, sent everybody talking and I think giggling a little bit in many circles. But what was your response to that? And have you had to sort of do some, I'll use the term loosely, damage control on what followed from that tourism campaign that it seemed to cause more of an issue inside of New Zealand than it did outside? But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think tourism campaigns are always about highlighting the essence of a country, and humour is one of the things we pride ourselves on. We can laugh at ourselves and we can see humour in things, but the campaign was principally focused on the great things about our country, and that's what I would focus on. I mean, we are a small, proud country. We're actually geographically the size of Britain, so we're not that small, but we have 5.5 million people, so the same size as Singapore. But we have absolutely beautiful countryside. We have fantastic people. We have thriving businesses. And we've talked about the academic institutions. But if you're a tourist coming to New Zealand, there's something for everyone. If you're into golf or wine or adventure tourism, you want to ski.
Bungee jumping, of course.
Bungee jumping. If you want to swim in our wonderful beaches, which is one of the things I enjoy doing in New Zealand, then, there's a bit of everything there. You can see dolphins, you can see whales, you can eat fine food. That's the focus of a tourism campaign. And if there was some humour, well, we can take that.
Yeah, of course you can. Speaking of the humour and tourism, I think one of your greatest tourism cultural ambassadors of the last 10, 20 years is Taika Waititi, the New Zealand filmmaker. I think his New Zealand movies make me want to go to New Zealand more than anything else. I think they're brilliant. He conveys your beautiful wilderness, your landscapes, your sense of humour, your warmth, your empathy. I think his movies are fabulous. And of course, he's now since gone on and made Thor movies and Ragnarok, and he's become very successful. What are your views on that, the value of the arts and cultural imports and exports of New Zealand?
I think they're critical, and absolutely. I mean, Taika Waititi he's a national icon, as are other members of our film family, and it goes back, before Peter Jackson. There is a tradition of New Zealand film globally that's had real impact. But it's not just the film industry. I noticed that you had the Singapore Ballet in here before. The Royal New Zealand Ballet is superb and, again, travels from time to time. We have symphony orchestra, we have the New Zealand Opera. So in the classical performing arts, we celebrate these cultural parts of our heritage as well. And just over the last couple of weeks, we've had in New Zealand a competition that happens every year to Matatini, which is where the very best of our kapahaka groups, so our Māori performing arts groups, come together to compete and perform. It's utterly stunning. Absolutely extraordinary, the talent and the capability and the commitment of these groups. So I think this thing, the issues to do with culture are critical across the board.
Fascinating. Hey, we just have a little bit of time left, and we're going to do what we do with all of your counterparts here, which is a quick little lightning round about what you like about Singapore, where you go. So the first question is, when you have free time, where do you like to go to visit a tourist destination or not in Singapore?
So when I have free time, and it's not that often, I like to get out in nature. Yeah. So I just have a short amount of time, I pop down onto the rail corridor. I can get there in 12 minutes from my house, and I just walk for as far as I can. And then I might pop back via Holland Village and get some eggs from a nice cafe before I go home. If I have a little more time, I'll try to get to a beach. And I won't swim here, even though ocean swimming is one of the things I love. But I will put my feet in the water. So we go to East Coast Park sometimes, and there's a place there, the hawker centre, that serves carrot cake, and I might have that after I've been walking on the beach.
Negating all the good you've just done in your exercise.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but it tastes good.
Do you ever get out to Changi Beach Park or Pasir? I say that because it has all the things that East Coast Park has, but like New Zealand, a fraction of the people. So you can get out to those places as well.
Well, that's a good recommendation, and maybe I'll try and get out there.
Right, okay. You've mentioned carrot cake. Favourite foods in Singapore?
Favourite foods in Singapore. Well, like everyone, I like chicken rice. I like good crab when I can get good crab. But I also eat a lot of vegetarian food, and I'm really pleased that actually quite a lot of good vegetarian food is available here as well. I love Southeast Asian flavours. So Singaporean food, Vietnamese food, Thai food, it's all available here, and I try to shop around.
Awesome.
Fabulous.
Final question, as you have 2 years left on your time here, what do you hope will be, I'll use the word legacy, after your time is done in Singapore? What will you hope to achieve?
Well, this year my focus is with my team and our teams in Wellington and the Singapore officials to try and deliver a really good enhanced partnership with Singapore as part of our 60th anniversary celebrations. So we have there's work going on diplomatically. It was announced between our Prime Ministers last April when Prime Minister Luxon was here, and running alongside that are a series of activities we have planned to commemorate this really amazing relationship. So if I get to the end of this year and I've helped deliver a series of good anniversary events, I'll feel really good. And then I guess next year is about implementing what we've agreed and getting some concrete outcomes.
Yeah.
And a final question from me. If a young girl or teenager was listening to this and says, I want to go into a certain career, but I don't see any female role models in that career, I don't see a pathway for me, what would you say?
I would encourage her to do that, and I would say that she would be following in the footsteps of giants. And I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about my mother's generation and the generation above that, because I always think if I had it hard, and there were things that were hard, they had it much harder. So the only thing to do is to leap in and to do what Charmaine Poultney would have told me back in the 1980s. Don't accept what is, push forward and see what might be.
Perfect.
We will leave it there. Gabrielle Rush, the New Zealand High Commissioner to Singapore, thanks for being with us. Hope you'll come back.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.